Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Everybody in Warsaw, hello. The socks are orange. Anybody want to have a guess? But yes, my country of origin is the Netherlands. And it's a pleasure for me today to speak to you about digital IT procurement and the benefits of punchout. Let me maybe say a little bit more about myself before I go into my slides. So I'm buyer manager in Cabot, and the team that I am leading is responsible for Europe, Middle East, which in our case includes Dubai, and North America, which includes Mexico as well. So quite a big range of countries that we cover, with some different requirements, but also with a lot of opportunities to standardize and to find ways to to get the benefits of a particular setup. And this is a little bit of a journey that I want to take you on today. Share with you some of the changes we have made in the last 2 years. I will start quite high, sort of 30,000 feet view, and then start to focus in a bit on some specific examples and use cases that show the journey that we have made, but also what sort of is ahead of us as we continue to benefit from a particular setup. I think it will be really nice to see that there is some different angle here, especially if I sort of look back at this morning, the two presentations, one from Danone and one from Boston Consulting Group. There's definitely a lot of the elements in that presentation that I also could talk about, but I've chosen a slightly different angle. And you will see as we go through the presentation. But certainly there are a lot of the elements that were covered by the fellow speakers this morning that also were applicable to our situation as an organization. And so I don't want to sort of ignore that, but I also won't go into detail on those elements. So let me briefly share a little bit with you about our company. So we've been sort of 140 years young, founded in 1882, headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts in the United States, about 4,000 employees, and we have about 35 manufacturing facilities across the globe. So some countries we have multiple, so hence the number of countries a little bit smaller. Our FY22 sales was well over $4 billion US. What's probably to kind of understand, without going in a lot of detail about what we do. So we are working in a number of segments, but definitely in our reinforcement materials and performance chemicals segments, we are the number 1 or 2 leading in those businesses. So, for example, reinforcement materials, you have to think about tire industry, and making tires durable, making them, like perform under the right conditions. And definitely in countries like ours, we know the summer tires, winter tires, and the big difference that can make. But also a big change there in terms of electric vehicles and how they, what they need, the kind of tires they need. And for performance chemicals, there's a lot there that you could think of, but one example is battery materials, conductive plastics, very interesting industry. Of course, for us as well, very important to be sustainable and to be more sustainable maybe than we were in the past. So this is our current focus as a corporation, to see how can we become greener and make sure that we also do our contribution to a more sustainable future. I'm based, as Margaret said, in our global business services in Riga, which is a dedicated service center for Europe and North America, with over 250 amazing colleagues working there. Very quite international environment, people from about 30 different countries. And our operations are in some different languages as well. So obviously for EMEA region, for the countries where we do have a manufacturing facility, we are most likely also having some support staff that speak the local languages. So you see a couple of examples there. Obviously with people coming from actually all over the globe, we know a lot more languages among our team, but these are the ones that we actually use in our day-to-day service operation and service delivery. And as those of you who may be familiar with shared services, it's quite common to have some also different coverage. So my team, for example, the team that works for the North America region, they would start at midday local time till into the mid-evening to cover the time zone difference. All right. So let me go a little bit into what our transformation journey looked like. And the slide there definitely has a few elements, but in case it's a bit hard to read, I will definitely share with you some of the details. And before I go into this one, I think it's actually quite interesting to share a few things that I recently was reading in a report that was released by Hackett about procure to pay. And some of the trends, in the top 10 of trends, there were a couple that I sort of struck me and that I realized, hey, we're working on those already. For example, number 2 is the digitization of business-to-business connections and transactions. And you will see in the presentation today how we already have made some of that work. The number 3 in the top 10 is real-time visibility using analytical tools. And number 6 is advanced analytics to prioritize workload and manage performance. This is a really big one for me personally as well, to say like, hey, how can I use the team that I have, the resources, the best possible way to get best value for our organization in supporting the business. And then I read a bit more in that report, and I found some even more interesting elements there around priorities in procure to pay. And the top 3 that is mentioned in this report has been consistent for at least the past 5 years. Number 1 is digital transformation. Number 2 is stakeholder satisfaction, maybe also not a surprise. And then 3 is pretty much what I was just saying, obtain more value from the procure to pay process. So as we started our journey, for us it became really important to transform sourcing, contracting and procure to pay processes. We wanted to deliver sort of a lower cost to serve, or as a minimum to find, higher, more value-added activities that we could bring better value to the business. So just to share some of the goals, you can see there on the top a few sort of statistics. We wanted to reduce the time it takes to get an order to suppliers by 70%. And we wanted to have 75% touchless orders and invoices. And I will show you throughout this presentation how we have been going on that in the past 1.5 years, approximately, what's been the progress, and where we still have also some areas to work and to win. Plus some examples that sit in the IT category, actually, that show us how well you can streamline and organize your procure-to-pay process. So here's some of the achievements and some of the things that are coming for us. So what was a really big change for us as an organization was that the ownership of requisitions and also the ownership of the orders throughout its life cycle became more on the requesters, more on the business. They know what they need. They are the ones who request it. And yes, we can support them with our expertise, but we need to sort of do that hand in hand. And it's a bit too easy to say, here's the requisition, good luck purchasing, and we'll wait for the outcome. So you need to do that really together. At the same time, starting some automation and introducing a new system, in our case, Coupa, purchasing is no longer looking at every requisition. So this is a big change for us, where we used to basically check each and every single requisition, and now a lot of the requisitions that are going through the system, they are not even seen by us. They may have been already turned into a purchase order by the system before we even knew that the requisition was there. The next one is supplier invoice processing and the ability for suppliers to submit their invoices directly into our system, increasing invoice accuracy and increasing and reducing the time it takes to receive invoices, but also making sure that we can pay on time. Digital supplier onboarding, I think this was a really a nice change for us, is where the suppliers go through the same form. We would use to send an email and ask them, hey, can you please send us your company information? And you can imagine that in a lot of cases, something was missing. They didn't send us their VAT ID, or they didn't send us their SWIFT code or something like that. And some of them you can get around. You can go online and calculate the SWIFT code or obtain it, but it's better if you get everything in one format. So doing the digital supplier onboarding for us made a big difference as everybody went through the same standardized elements. And so, as I mentioned, the changes in the way that the requisitions and orders are processed had a big impact on the purchasing team. A lot of changes there in how we deal with the system and how we deal with what's going through there. And instead of every transaction manual doing the same stuff over and over again, we are now getting into a position where we can start to look at some different elements. So what are some of those elements? Is still to continue to get more automated supplier invoices. And I will show some example in a moment. Then the next big opportunity, which is a bit more on the user experience side, is the guided buying, where people just say, hey, I need this particular thing. Just show me what the options are. And they don't really care about which supplier it is. They don't really care about maybe even how fast it comes. They just say, this is what I need, and please get it for me, without going into too much details. So you can imagine there's a big opportunity there with your data analytics and reporting as well, how you can benefit from that information that goes through your system, and how you can get to sort of the next level, going into the details and dive deeper into the data. And lastly, the till spend management, which is one of the use cases that I will be talking about towards the end of the presentation. The opportunity to sort of maybe bring back some of those automated requisitions that we currently don't see and say like, hey, can we actually manage that, but not putting in too much effort? So finding the balance there between effort, achieving savings, and also delivering to the needs of our organization. So just a couple of things that probably most of you will recognize when you think about what would you be looking for when you purchase, for example, IT items. So we as a global company, of course, we benefit from standardized base equipment, and that's what we are looking for. In that space, the sort of the standard that everybody gets, a computer, a mouse, a screen, a monitor, those kind of things, they are pretty standardized. And for those, we would want to use the same or very similar equipment. And their users don't have maybe a lot of choice in saying, hey, I want something else. A very big one is this ability to integrate into the procurement process, and that's where your e-procurement tool comes in, where you have an opportunity to exchange information from system to system, rather than going through email or phone calls or outside the system. When we look into the type of suppliers that we're looking for, because we are probably big enough to look at things at a slightly bigger scale, we would be mostly looking for suppliers with a regional or global presence. But similar to what Damien was saying this morning, making sure that those suppliers do still have the local knowledge and are not just only caring about the big volumes. Availability and flexibility is a very big element as well, making sure that we can get the goods that we need as soon as possible, but also if there are some last-minute adjustments or changes required, that can be supported as well. Customer support is a very important one. I spoke to a few colleagues and they were mentioning like, hey, end user accidentally or ordered the wrong stylus for their iPad. And I really wanted to be able to speak, and I was able to contact customer support, and they were able to swap out the product without any much problems, and that way still providing a good experience to the end user. And then in some cases, what we start seeing a bit more is also that we're looking for value-added services. We need to upgrade routers across 12 facilities in the EMEA region. Who can do that for us? Who can manage this upgrade? All right, so let me share a little bit more specific opportunities that we are seeing at the moment for the IT category. So the purchasing team, the buyer team, really is getting in a position now to start supporting sourcing with spend data and buying channel usage. So buying channels in our system are the different ways how you can already sort of follow a predetermined purchasing path. Where we have a better level of control to make sure that whatever we order is already linked to our preferred suppliers, is linked to our contracts, making sure that we get the most out of our contracts, that we get the best value for money. So these data analysis are becoming very important, and we are now sort of ready in a position to start looking into that into more detail. At the same time, of course, I was mentioning it before already, this is a collaboration, and to be able to serve our requesters the best way, what really helps is if they enter quality requisitions. So we still have a little bit of a journey to go after initial implementation of our Coupa system and sort of a good start. We now start seeing that it is, some people also have changed across the organization. Maybe people got into a new position or we have new colleagues joining. And it's really important that our requesters continue to make clear and good and quality requisitions so that the whole the whole process from start to finish can benefit from that setup. And what we're seeing also as a great opportunity is to provide end users with recommended purchases. So it links a bit to this example that I gave is like, hey, I need a Bluetooth headset. And so you can go into the system, you just search for Bluetooth headset, and it already gives you the recommended option or options. And say, like, hey, here are 3 different options in 3 different price ranges that we know we can get at a good price for based on our contracts. So having these data analysis and insights then allow us to focus on making those smart choices and making the choices on the right things. So really get maximizing the value of the contracts we have in place. And when we do that, we try to be quite comprehensive and look at everything. So price, of course, is one element, but it's not everything. Product selection, quality of what will be delivered, availability, delivery time, but also, for example, vendor risk management, making sure that we don't put everything on 1 or 2 suppliers, but that we still have some diversity there as well. I think it's important to mention that also here we need a little bit of understanding or input from our requesters to share with us and say, like, hey, I can wait 2 weeks. Okay, if you can wait 2 weeks, we can maybe get it for a better price, or we can maybe get it, in a more sustainable way. And those would be then the things that the levers we can pull to still meet your expectations in a good way. And we sort of did it a little bit the other way around. We sort of implemented the system, but we did it for everything, almost everything, across the regions, basically globally, but my focus is on the regions that we serve from Riga. And now we are into the next level where we will be focusing on process and system improvements and harmonizing things so that across the regions we can do 80, maybe 90% of all transactions in a standardized way. I need something experience I discussed and also the consolidation of requests. And as I go now into some examples, you will see that, there is still some room for opportunity there as well. So as we start looking in the data, what are some of the elements we're looking for? We're definitely looking for repeat purchases. We're looking for large amounts where we see that we order a lot from the same supplier, but it is still not going through a structured buying channel. Or we look for similarities in products and services ordered, and then we may say like, hey, maybe our location in the Czech Republic versus our location in France, they're using very similar filters. Maybe we can, align, and maybe one of them can make a change so that we can have bigger volume with one and the same supplier and standardize also that way. So sometimes it goes really far. It even touches into operational, into the facilities, into the factories. When we think more about the bigger picture, and I can see this is an interesting need that also comes from within the organization, the market analysis, that's a bit that we can do. Together with the sourcing team, we can get quite some information. Nowadays, there's so much available online, you can get all that information. But what's sometimes a bit harder is to get this input from your existing and potential suppliers who say like, hey, I actually have this solution that you may not be aware of. But I know you, or I understand your business, and this is something that we believe is interesting to you. So I think that's going to become still increasingly important in the coming years. If you look at, of course, the benefits for our end users is the easy-to-use process. They should just be, spending no more than 2 minutes to request a simple requisition to put that in the system, and they, for a lot of the things that we do. They would expect a quick turnaround of those orders. So unless we're talking about some long lead time items or some complex cases, they would want things to be delivered fast. All right. So I promised you to share a little bit of where we've come from and where we are today, and these numbers will give you a little bit of information on that. So using punchouts, so that is the ability to, from your e-procurement tool, to visit a supplier's website to make your purchases, basically. We were at a very low percentage, and actually, if I would go back even before 2021 in our old setup, we were probably at about 2.5% of orders that could be going through a punch out. And the challenge there was two systems. So people needed to think, am I going to order IT items, or am I going to order something else? Which system do I use? Where do I put my requisition? Still, it's not always that easy to standardize. And if you compare, for example, IT procurement with some other categories, like professional services or facility services, of course, IT is a great category where you can standardize, especially when you order goods. So you can channel your orders, you can put them together, you can put them all through the same channel, and it is relatively easy to organize. Still, in EMEA region, we see that our punch-out performance is about 17.5%, where our goal was 50%. So we still have some way to go there. From touchless purchase orders, I didn't put the number on here, but we actually started with our previous setup. We started with 2.5% only. So it was a very low number of touchless orders. And in the big scheme of things, it didn't really make a difference for the service delivery as such. This one we managed to capitalize on really quickly, and we got to 87% already in the first year, in the year that we launched Coupa. And last year we were at 94%, and you will see that in both cases that already exceeded our goal of 75%. Then our own contract spend, and I think this is an important one. We didn't have any means to officially track in the system. Are we actually purchasing against our contracts? Or are we doing rogue spend that doesn't maybe get the best rates that we negotiated with a particular supplier? Now the system actually allows us to link our requisitions to contracts, and we can see the contract spend. There we already made quite some good progress, and we're currently at 40%, where our goal is 50%. So this is really well underway, an opportunity to meet that goal. And e-invoicing, I mentioned it before, is a big deal for us as well. We didn't have that ability. It just simply didn't exist. It was not possible with our ERP system. Currently, if we look at EMEA region as a whole, we're at 16%, and you can see also in this space we are quite far off from our goal of 75%. However, if I compare this to North America, where apparently it seems to be a bit easier for suppliers to get on board with new setup, there we are currently about 50%, 50. So we know that it is possible to get this in a good space as well. And just to one more time, but it's quite because you sort of wonder where are the savings. So there are the savings. That's one, e-invoicing versus manual invoicing. And the other one is the purchase order creation, where we went from 100% manual purchase order creation to 100% automated. So in our current setup, every purchase order is automatically created once the requisition is fully approved. Why this is becoming quite interesting for us to look a bit deeper also into the IT category is that we have seen quite some steady spend in the years, I would say, even from 2017. So say roughly 2017 to 2020, we spent approximately the same in EMEA region on IT. Then we saw a little bit of a dip in 2021, which no doubt is linked to COVID as well. But as soon as the world sort of opened up again and new opportunities came, things went up pretty quickly. Of course, there's still the factor of inflation here and rising costs that definitely plays a role, but the difference is more than that. And so for us, if we look at 2023 forecast, it will still be again a 12% increase from last year, which was already a big increase from 2021. And what we sort of see now is that with a number of contracts having ended, we have an opportunity to start to put these things together, to look at our data and say, like, hey, where can we bundle things and make the next big step forward in our digitization. the other one is really about our IT spend linked to the tools and the processes that we have, the implementation and maintenance cost of our tools as well. So not just the sort of the hard side, but also the system side of things. And in the use cases, I will share an example there as well. And so we can, sort of manage a larger amount of spend still in a better way, using sort of the same amount of resources, but getting more value for money. When we look at the example here of the punch-out that we have with Markit, and the reason why I took this one is because it is the best example we have in the EMEA region. So we see, you saw in my slides on what are we looking for. One of them is this integration of systems. And we have been working very intensively with Markit to actually make it happen. And you can see there, if you look at the old situation, where we sort of already did quite okay with even with punch-outs. So when we used Ariba in the past, we had about 89% of our orders on punch-out, which was pretty good. But still, we saw also every couple of orders a month that were going through manually. And we had no opportunity for e-invoicing. In the Coupa setup, with big improvement on our side, we are now at 98%, which is very high. It's one of the best results in the industry to get to a punch-out spend of 98%. And so here's where the time savings are being recorded for the purchasing and payables team. Because there's no manual intervention here. The sourcing is done, everything is in place, the contract with Markit is there, and when we purchase through the punch-out, we get the contracted pricing. Also, the on-contract spend here is 96%, so that's very good as well. So 96% of the spend is already linked to the contract, which you saw from my previous slide is much higher than the average of 40 that we have in the region at the moment. Of course, the next step now is, okay, what is maybe spent that is not going through this punch-out, that is not going through Markit at all, but that is going through other suppliers, and that's the rogue bit, and that's sort of where we're getting ready now to go through. Also, when you talk about e-invoicing, and you can see how fast that can grow. So if you look there at the red line, we started in last year with Markit to see how can we do the integration of the invoicing part as well. So the order has been completed, the goods have been shipped, and can we just get the invoice straight into our system? And as we started working on that, the first month, this is on a monthly basis, the increase. The first month, December last year, we had about 10% of Markit invoices that were automated, that were digital. January, 42. February, 52. Can't wait to see March, because we can see here how fast this can grow. And just to give you again a feel for the savings, e-invoices in Cabot, they are not fully touchless. We still need to do a few checks on the payable side. But generally speaking, a normal invoice gets processed about 66% faster than if we need to do a lot of manual data entry. So I will be closing with a few examples of use cases and where we now are working to, for example, put in place a digital asset manager role. I briefly mentioned there to try and understand what are all the different tools and that we have that we currently have contracts with. What subscriptions do we have? What annual commitments do we have across digital and IT? And then how can we optimize that? So I think that's a pretty straightforward one. The next one, after we sort of got rid of all the requisitions that go automated, we're now going to bring some of that back again to the purchasing team and say like, hey, can we source a bit better anything that sits roughly between 1,000 and 25,000 US dollars? And can we try to get better pricing there? Also a great opportunity to check with our suppliers, make sure our current suppliers, to make sure that the prices that they offer us are still competitive. And with this approach, we also get, again, better visibility into the regional and global spend. So this is a till spend management initiative that currently is being rolled out across Cabot in EMEA and North America, and where we are going to be able now to, instead of processing manually requisitions, we actually are going to achieve savings for the company. And the last example here is on category data. So if we look at IT category, our next step is to really look at your top and your bottom spend. So that is the tail, but also your big contracts and your big expenditures. Then make sure that we consolidate where we can without having too much risk and keep the supplier diversity as we need it to be. And then put quality measures in place to enhance our users' experience. So I hope that this has helped you to kind of understand of the big progress we made in the past 2 years. It took some time to get where we are today, but it really has set us up to now start benefiting from this way of working. So thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions.